Now, it is a week which began with a promise from President Obama to help drive through tough new gun controls, and a week which ended with a tragic, fatal shooting in South Africa involving one of the world's most famous sporting superstars. President Obama is now back on his home turf of Chicago, where he's going to be talking again about the need to address America's gun laws. Over now to our Washington correspondent, Matt Fry. Matt.
Well, Christian, President Obama, in his State of the Union speech, talked about a whole range of issues, most emotionally gun control, and he's gone on a sort of rhetorical road trip around America to hammer home those points. Now, today he's in Chicago, his own hometown, arrived about an hour ago, and has gone straight to a school in his own home neighborhood of Hyde Park. And he's going to talk about the economy, according to the White House, and the middle class, and he's going to touch on fatherhood and family, etc., etc. But he can't not refer to the gun war that is raging on the very streets of his own neighborhood, because just a few weeks ago, a 15-year-old girl whose parents were at the State of the Union address was shot in the back at a school about a mile from his house. So this is a very emotional issue for Barack Obama. Now, we've, of course, as you may know, also been to Chicago this week, and we've been examining America's tortured relationship with guns all week long in our special series. And just to give you a flavor of some of the voices that we heard in those reports, just look at this quick reminder.
If there isn't some type of change in the national consciousness by 6- and 7-year-old children being gunned down in the sanctity of their school, then I think we have lost true north in this country.
Teachers want to fight back.
Even though they're not my children, they are still my kids that I feel like I need to protect.
Now I can't pledge allegiance to your flag.
Chicago rough, real rough. You'll get shot just because somebody look at you the wrong way, you look at them the wrong way.
Your boss sends you to come do something, and if he tell you go kill a man, you kill him.
You talking to a mother of a murdered child. I want a gun so bad because somebody killed my child, you know.
Chloe is 8.
Well, I was nervous at first, and now I love it.
Yeah. It's a tool, just like a drill, just like a car, just like any other implement.
Americans do have a right. They keep and bear arms in their homes to protect their families.
But not semi-automatic rifles.
They don't need assault-style weapons.
I'm saying that the president should remember George III's experience.
That sounds like a warning.
Of course it is. That's what the Second Amendment is. It's a warning.
Some of the voices that we heard from this week. And remember, we're doing this series and America is debating guns because it's 2 months on to the day since 20 children were killed at Newtown in their elementary school in Connecticut. Now, let's put all this into some sort of context. In order to look at America's relationship with the gun, we have to look at the global picture. Let's start with South Africa. In the news this week because of Oscar Pistorius, it has one of the highest rates of gun deaths in the world, 18 people in every 100,000. American gun deaths are almost half that of South Africa's, 9 per 100,000, despite ownership being far greater. 2/3 of those deaths are suicidal or accidental. But that rate is far higher than any comparable developed economy, and in particular Europe. Now, Switzerland, the highest on the continent, has the highest gun ownership. Their rate of gun deaths is almost 4 per 100,000. Last, and I stress least, the United Kingdom's rate is a fraction of that at 0.25 deaths per 100,000. A lot of numbers there, Krish, but something to chew on for you and indeed your guests.
Thanks, Matt. Well, with me now, the novelist Lionel Shriver, whose book We Need to Talk About Kevin tackled the issue of gun violence in schools, and the US radio talk show host Charlie Wolfe, and the former Times and Sunday Times editor Sir Harold Evans, who has written widely on guns, joins us from New York. Sir Harold Evans, did the dial move this week at all, do you think? Did Barack Obama move America on gun control?
Yes, he did. It was very eloquent, and to see the victims was a powerful answer to the people who say guns don't kill people, because guns do kill people. And allied to President Obama is the very important and powerful mayor of New York, Bloomberg, who's putting millions of dollars to combat the weapons manufacturers' funding of the NRA, which continually obscures the issue and tries to get people to believe it's an attack on the Second Amendment when it's nothing of the kind.
Charlie Wolf, do you think America moved at all? Dial change?
Not, I mean, obviously, emotionally we did. It was a tragic situation. And going back to the State of the Union, there was a lot of stagecraft, what Mr. Obama does very well. But the NRA also has a lot of supporters who are just individuals. And since Newtown, these individuals have been buying guns in the hundreds of thousands and have been joining the NRA, again, in the thousands. So, you know, they're very worried about their Second Amendment rights. And these are also people that necessarily don't own guns. But they, you know, I'm someone who does not own a gun, but I value the Second Amendment, and I do not want to see it tampered with.
Lionel Shriver.
Could I?
Well, okay, yeah, go on. Harold Evans, go on.
Let me just say to Mr. Wolf, whom I know about, and he's a very eloquent person, there is absolutely no threat to the Second Amendment. The Heller judgment in the Supreme Court said as follows: the Second Amendment survives, but it's reasonable for states and cities and the federal government to impose reasonable restrictions so that crazy people don't get guns, so that ridiculous ammunition clips that can kill scores of people in a single trigger pull are actually exempted. And the public supports this. The latest Pew Opinion poll shows a 55% majority for taking assault weapons out of the public marketplace.
I'll come to you in a moment, Charlie Wolf, but let me just bring in Lionel Shriver, because this whole question of what America really feels about the Second Amendment seems sort of misunderstood and misportrayed often in the media.
It may be not completely misportrayed. Sometimes the problem is that it's correctly portrayed. One thing that struck me in your coverage this week is the powerful conviction among gun owners in the U.S. that one of the reasons that it's important for them to have the right to have a gun is in order to overthrow the government if necessary. And to me, this is the most heartbreaking justification.
And you think people actually think that?
Yes, they do. And after all, they harken back to the Declaration of Independence, which defends the right of any people to overthrow a tyrannical government. And Americans take that to heart as one of their rights. And I say it's heartbreaking.
Keeps them honest.
I say it's heartbreaking because the chances of the U.S. government allowing them to overthrow the U.S. government is zero.
I mean, that's true, isn't it? I mean, it's a crazy thing to hold on to, isn't it? That you might have the chance, Charlie Wolf, of overthrowing your government.
There were several reasons why that was there. One, of course, was self-protection, and ultimately it is a human right to protect oneself. And a gun is a great leveler, especially from a woman's standpoint. There was the story of the woman in, Kansas City, I believe. They had the two guys her husband had just passed away from cancer, and these two men were batting at her door trying to break in, and called up the police. A 999 lady said, well, whatever you need to do. And she shot her shotgun through the door and killed one of them, and protected herself and her two children.
Isn't Lionel Shriver part of the problem here is that whatever you do... Hold on, Harold Evans, I just want to bring in Lionel Shriver. I mean, that whatever you want to do about gun control, there are so many guns out there that it's not really going to change things culturally, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, I was struck by the fact that Obama, in his State of the Union address, used the rhetorical device of, you know, they deserve a vote. That doesn't mean they're going to get it.
Nothing.
And furthermore, the measures that are being considered most seriously, none of them would have prevented Newtown from happening. Even if you were to ban assault weapons now, his mother might have had one already. And furthermore, the last assault weapons ban was so shot full of holes that you could still get one.
Harold Evans, you want to get in?
No, I don't agree with any of that. This issue is so overlaid with propaganda. You have to address the law, and the law says it's reasonable for states to protect their citizens from madmen. I disagree entirely that if we'd had laws against mental health people getting hold of guns, there still would have been a tragedy. There are umpteen instances of crazy people getting guns who could not have got them if the law had been passed. There are umpteen instances of people firing machine guns, as it were, semi-automatic weapons, who kill more than one person. They kill 10, 11, 13. That wouldn't have happened if there'd been a ban on those ammunition clips. So it's absolute nonsense to say it wouldn't have made any difference. The facts are all against it. But it's very curious, actually. The majority of Americans in the latest Pew poll back a ban on assault weapons by 55%. The majority now think an endorsement of the NRA is an adverse thing and won't vote for that candidate.
Can I just introduce
you? Is what people really think.
Well, just one thing on the assault weapons. And again, there's a lot of people who do not understand guns. I'm not a gun person. I don't think Lionel, any of us here are gun people. These are assault-style weapons. We don't have assault weapons for sale in America. These are basically hunting rifles dressed up to look like assault weapons. And you know, it's interesting that the president is going to Chicago. Chicago actually has some of the strongest gun restrictions in the world, or at least in the United States. And still, you know, we had this case of Hadia Pendleton. She was killed by gang members. So anything he's proposing is not really addressing the problem. There's a major problem with young black youth in America, in Chicago.
But this is not an American disease, is it? I mean, the terrible case in South Africa with Oscar Pistorius, even though we don't know the details of exactly what happened, at least tells us that this is not an American disease.
No, it's not, though there are some unique problems in the United States, one of them being this whole idea of a background check for example, the mentally ill. We don't have the apparatus in place. We have 50 different states. They all have different laws. They all have different reporting requirements. And, you know, there's been talk of putting together a federal database that lists all people who are mentally ill, but that comes with its own problems. You know, it's a big civil rights issue.
Yeah, the ACLU would be the first to raise an objection to that.
We must leave it there. Charlie Wolf, Lionel Shriver, and Sir Harold Evans, thank you all very much.